Um, um, I'm excited. My name is Dr. Tony Issenman. We're going to be starting the webinar here in just a couple minutes. We'll allow just another moment or two for parents to log in, and I'm very excited to be able to present to you this evening. So as you should be able to see on your screen, I'm going to be presenting on a concept called differentiation. And the title of the presentation is Differentiation, a Model for Understanding Adolescent Development, Presenting Problems, and Determining Treatment Goals. So it's a lot to cover, and we're going to try to do it in about an hour. So I think we can do that. And as you can also see that my name is down there, and my contact information will be on the last slide in case we're not able to get to your questions. Please, if throughout the presentation you do have questions, feel free to chime in. I'm happy to field the questions along the way. This is a concept that builds on itself, so my hope is that if you have a question, just chime in right away, ask that, because it may be important to understanding something in a later slide. So yeah, just feel free to chime in. Again, my name is Dr. Tony Issenman. I'm the Family Services Director and also a clinical therapist here. So an overview of what we're going to cover in our presentation today. We're going to talk about the definition of differentiation. So I'll define that term, and then I'll spend a little bit of time explaining what the importance of differentiation is and how that applies to your family and your student, your child who is here in the program at Open Sky. We're going to talk about the benefits of increasing one's level of differentiation and why that would be important to us, and how just this whole idea of differentiation, how it is developed. After we cover that, then we're going to talk about some of the common barriers to differentiating, and then also once we have an understanding of this concept, how do we use this idea to inform treatment? And that is not only, we'll talk not only about how we can use this idea to inform treatment with the students in the field, but how you can use this, the concepts that we talk about, to understand your relationship with your child, and also how you go about making decisions for yourself. So that is all of what we're going to cover on our conversation today. So the first topic, the first word to define here is the word differentiation. And what I hope to make clear is that this is a concept that is related to both inter and intrapersonal development. And this is a concept that is it's true for everybody, whether they've ever heard of the term differentiation or not. It's kind of like IQ in that sense, that one has a level of differentiation, whether they've ever measured their differentiation, whether they've ever heard of or used the term, they have a level of differentiation similar to having an IQ, whether one knows what their level of IQ is. And the differentiation that we're going to be talking about today relates to how one goes about making sense of the world for themselves, and also how they go about making sense of their relationships they have with other people. Again, inter and intrapersonal development. This is a developmental model. It comes from the field of family therapy. Dr. Murray Bowen is one of the founders of and just the creators of this concept. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the history of differentiation and how he came to see the similarities between the field of biology, which differentiation came from, and family therapy, which is where this concept is very much utilized today. So one of the things to understand about differentiation as we talk about it today is, many of the students that I've worked with in the field, whether they're adolescents or young adults, they talk about wanting independence. And in order to have true independence, what is necessary is to have a high level of differentiation. And so we'll talk about how this concept of differentiation is necessary for true independence, even though students and sometimes parents confuse lower levels of differentiation with independence because of some of the emotional experience that it can create. And so we'll try to make that distinction throughout our conversation today. So, as I mentioned, Dr. Murray Bowen is one of the founders of family therapy, the field of family therapy. He was a medical doctor. And one of the things that he noticed early on in some of his practice is that adolescent development is not that different, for him when he was looking at it, than cell differentiation. And what he began to see is that for a healthy cell to develop, it would develop inside the mother cell or sister cell, and then as it would grow, it would, when functioning properly, when it had everything that it needed, it would separate from that mother cell at the designated time, and it would go off to perform all of its functions as a fully functioning cell. And they noticed that Dr. Murray Bowen and some of his some of the folks working with him noticed that doesn't always happen. Sometimes what happens is that cell separates before it's ready. It thinks it's got everything that it needs to function as a fully functioning and independent cell, so it separates earlier than it really needs to. And what happens is that on a molecular level, it withers and dies. It never fully functions. And that's, they noticed, is similar to what happens in sometimes with adolescent development. Now, he also noticed that at times the cell begins to separate from that original cell and never fully detaches. It just becomes this tumor on that original cell. And Murray noticed that that's also similar to adolescent development. Some adolescents, at the appropriate time, begin to separate in healthy, appropriate ways from their family. But many do not, and those who do not often leave the nest or try to leave the nest before they have everything that they need, and they wither. They never really reach their full emotional potential. And others become attached to that mother cell, that family of origin, in a way that's not necessarily age appropriate. And so that's what this whole concept of differentiation began with, some of these early recognitions that there's got to be some way to capture this. There's got to be some way to capture this idea of adolescent development in a way that begins to look more directly at what is necessary for adolescents to separate the way that the mother cell, the family of origin, want that child to separate at the appropriate time when they have everything they need to be fully functioning. And that's what we're going to get into today, is how do we look at the specifics that are necessary so as not to launch the child or have that child leave the home before they're ready, but also not to have the child still at home or dependent upon that family of origin at an age that is much later than when you had intended to launch your young adult. So when we're talking about independence, I want us to keep in mind that what this is saying. So independence, in terms of our definition here, is going to be the ability to remain oneself in the face of group influences, especially intense emotional influences. Sometimes that can be from the family, sometimes that can be from the peer group, but really comes down to, can one be oneself, be true to one's values in the midst of that emotional intensity? And that's what true independence is in terms of what we're discussing tonight. So to think about this, think of a theoretical scale of 0 to 100, and where 100, the higher scores represent a greater level of differentiation. And the goal then is to have the highest level of differentiation that we can. Now, nobody's at 100. If they are, they're probably fooling themselves. And probably very few people are at 0. Maybe if there are some very significant emotional, physical, medical issues, then they may be really low. But most of us are somewhere in between. And for the sake of this slide and for the presentation tonight, what I would just want you to understand is that the higher the level of differentiation, the greater the level of emotional maturity and overall health. Again, we're now going to start to get into some of the slides that may be confusing. Please feel free to chime in if you have any questions about this. So we've talked about this overarching idea of differentiation. And what I want to talk about now is that we all have there are two separate parts of differentiation. One is a basic level of differentiation, and one is a functional level of differentiation. We're going to spend some time talking about each so that we can understand some of the behaviors that you've witnessed with your children, and when we're honest with ourselves, that we can witness with ourselves. So the basic level is represented here by this gray line that you'll notice on this arrow, this orange arrow that is up and down. This arrow represents a level of functioning, and so where this arrow is, it would be about a 50 on this scale. Now, the basic level of differentiation is not observable. We're not going to see this with behaviors. This is a level of the basic level is not dependent upon the day-to-day stress that we all experience. It's going to be stable, and it runs through all of our day-to-day interactions, whether we're having a good day or a bad day. The basic level is going to be an indicator of how we've learned to cope with those stressors, and we'll get into this in just a second. What I want to point out with this slide, though, is that the higher the basic level, so when we're talking about differentiation, you'll remember that the higher the level of differentiation, the greater our overall level of health. And so the higher the basic basic level means that we're more consistently going to be able to act the way we want, and that is our functional level. And so again, the basic level does not fluctuate too much. It's very stable, and really after about 18, 19 years old, it takes a tremendous amount of work to push this, and that's why when in my work with students, and when I as the family services director, I'm working with you as parents, at times we can see and push the students at times more than we can the parents. There's a level of flexibility with this concept of differentiation with adolescence that becomes pretty rigid as we get older. That doesn't mean it can't change. It can. It just takes a tremendous amount of effort and intention, and it takes an environment that's conducive to that, as we'll see here in a few moments. So this is just a concept, again, to touch on the basic level, that is stable. It's not going to fluctuate a whole lot without intention and effort. As we move to the functional level, this, I apologize, I'm not sure why, but in a second, these, I'll just go ahead and flip through the whole screen here. As you can now see on this slide, the functional level is indicated by the two black lines. This is a range of behaviors, and the basic level is represented by the gray line, which is in the middle. Again, this is because the basic level does not fluctuate, it's not observable, but what we can see is the functional level of differentiation. And the variance between the upper range and the lower range of behaviors is going to be a key indicator of how high one's basic level of differentiation is. So to speak more directly to that, the functional level is observable. When we're going around, when you're having a good day, how do you interact with your spouse, your partner, your children, at work? Does that fluctuate much than from a day when it just seems like everything's falling apart? And whether you're thinking about yourself or your children, there's typically a variance between how we handle things on a great day and how we handle things when things are going poorly. That is the functional level. And because that is what we can see. Again, you think about somebody in your life, it's probably not you, it's probably somebody else, but think about somebody in your life who on a good day, they're a pleasure to be around, they seem like they've got it all together, and then on a day when things begin to fall apart, stress begins to rise, there's just a bit of anxiety, and they seem like a completely different person. You may be able to know someone like that in your life. And if so, that's going to be an indicator of a lower basic level of differentiation, because there will be a greater fluctuation in the functional level. And I'm going to show this in a chart here in just a second. But what I want to point out is that the functional level is observable, and it is very dependent on the day-to-day stress, the relational difficulties that one's having, how things are going at work, how things are going at home. When stress begins to enter the picture, then we're going to see that play out on the functional level of differentiation. It doesn't mean that one necessarily all of a sudden becomes less mature in terms of their basic overall level of functioning. Their overall level of maturity remains the same. Their range of behavior, again, is an indicator of how mature they as a person are. Okay, I think I've made that point clear. I'm going to illustrate that with the next couple slides. With this slide, what you can see is that with a high basic level of differentiation, again, the basic level is indicated in gray. You'll notice that it's toward the top of the screen, toward the 100 mark, and let's just call that 90. And therefore, the variance between the upper level of functioning and the lower level of functioning is not great. So there might be a 5-point discrepancy there. Maybe the upper range is 95, the lower range is 85, and so from the basic level, there's a 5-point difference between their upper range of functioning and their lower range. What that really means in terms of day-to-day functioning is that people with this extremely high level of basic differentiation are able to manage the day-to-day stressors that come up in a way that is not significantly different than the way they handle things when life is great. And that means, in terms of understanding our children, is that the higher the level of differentiation, the greater the ability to handle things in times of stress and turmoil the way they really want to handle them. So there's a greater ability to act on their own values, act the way that later, a day later, looking back on that scenario, saying, wow, that was a very stressful day, and I'm happy with the way I handled that. That's going to be an indicator of a high level of basic differentiation. I think I skipped a slide here. I'm going to go back just one slide to low basic differentiation. So this slide indicates that with a lower level of basic differentiation, again, I've tried to maintain consistency, so the gray line always indicates basic level, the black line always indicates functional level. You'll notice that this gray line is lower on this scale. And my hope is that you'll also notice that the gap between the two black bars is greater. That is to represent a greater level of variance between their interactions. So when one has a lower level of differentiation, the way that they behave and engage in terms of managing their own life, as well as managing their relationships with others, will be dramatically affected. And so that's the indicator. And so again, the higher we move in our basic level, the less gap that we have between how we handle things on a good day and on a poor day. Again, just to make this point, the functional level, and these are some implications, things we can then determine from these concepts that we know. And just to spend a moment talking about this, this idea of differentiation started as a theoretical idea of just clinical observation and understanding of biology, and now it's been developed into, there's a tremendous amount of research. There are measures used to examine one's level of differentiation. It's used quite often with adolescents because, again, it's a developmental model, and adolescence is a normal, appropriate time to be increasing one's level of differentiation. So when we're talking about high levels and low levels, understand that, again, we all fall somewhere on this continuum. The goal, our own personal work, is what do we need to do to increase our personal level of differentiation so as to have a greater level of maturity, and adolescence is really the time to do that. So the functional level is an indicator of one's basic level, as we've talked about in the past couple slides. And this is a really important concept here, is that one can only befriend someone with a similar level of basic differentiation as themselves. This has been tested again and again and shown to be true. One can mentor somebody with a significantly different basic level of differentiation, but for a lasting friendship, and whether that's an adolescent friendship, whether that's an adult relationship, for a relationship to be sustaining and equally rewarding, there needs to be a similar level of basic differentiation, or the two can't meet each other's needs. And I'm going to illustrate that with a few slides when we begin to talk about what really is happening on the individual level of this differentiation and on the relational level of differentiation. As you remember in an earlier slide, I mentioned that this deals with both intra and interpersonal relationships. And so we'll talk about what this really means. But for this moment, I just want you to understand that we cannot really have lasting relationships with people who have a significantly different level of basic differentiation, because the needs are so different. We will not be able to satisfy them in each other. And that's really helpful when an adolescent wants to say, well, I'm the mature one in the relationship, but my friend here, they're not, because the reality is that they would not be together in terms of friendships or girlfriend-boyfriend relationships, girlfriend-girlfriend relationships, boyfriend-boyfriend relationships. They would not be together if there was not a similar level of basic differentiation. And that can look very differently, as we'll see in a moment, but the basic level is very, very close. This is also important, and this is one of the reasons that I am excited to be the Director of Family Services here at Open Sky, that as one's basic level of differentiation increases, one's friends and family must grow together, grow with that person, or they will grow apart. And that is also, it's a similar way, or it's a different way to say the point that was just above this, that as in a family, everybody meets each other's needs, and people are comfortable meeting each other's needs. But as one person begins to grow, they have new needs. And if everybody doesn't grow along with that person, then there will be a separation that occurs that may be more comfortable, but it may not be actually what the family wants or intends. And so be intentional about just highlighting that. Please feel free to write in if you have any questions about that idea of, as one grows in maturity, what they need from that relationship now is different. And if the other person doesn't grow along with them, they're not going to be compatible in the same way. And oftentimes that's when people grow apart. They didn't really grow apart. One matured and one did not. I mean, I guess it's a way of and I put the air quotes there because, yes, they did grow apart, but it's because one person chose not to grow along with the other person because perhaps it was too emotionally challenging. Okay, so this, I apologize, the numbers here looks like they've bumped up against the arrow. I think you can still make it out, and I'll talk you through it. So this is talking about the individual continuum. And with the individual continuum, what I really want to express is this is how one, an adolescent, also as adults, how we go about making decisions for ourselves. Like any continuum, the goal is to be in the middle. And you'll notice that here on the one side of the continuum we have our rational thought, and then on the other end of the continuum there is emotional belief. And that EB is supposed to be right up there against the emotional belief. I apologize for that slide. What I want to point out with this is that it's not all that being emotional is bad or inferior to being cognitive rational. And it's not that being rational is better or worse than being emotional. The point here is that if we can find that balance, then we can make healthier decisions for ourselves. And this is what we're working with the adolescents and young adults to do. We want them to, when you hear information, we're all going to take in that, and we're going to make sense to us on some level emotionally, and also it's going to make sense to us cognitively. And we want them to begin to slow that process down in order to not completely block out the emotion and only use their head. But we also don't want them to go to the point of not thinking and just being very emotional. And so the goal of this continuum is to find a balance, right there in the middle. Again, like any ideal, very few are right there at the middle. But we're getting close. And the goal is to get as close to that 50-50 mark as we can. You'll notice that again there's a 100 RT and a 0 EB, and that slide that part of the slide represents that far left and that continuum represents 100% rational and zero emotionality. If we go to the other side of that, that's going to represent 0% of rational thought and complete emotionality. And those are contributors. So then again, each point as we move toward the middle is going to be representative of that one point subtraction until we get to the 50-50 point in the middle. Again, what we want, the goal of successful differentiation is to be able to take in information, ask ourselves what do we think about this, how are we feeling about this, and given that, what do we believe is going to be the most appropriate way to proceed? Because this is an individual continuum. How we go about making decisions for ourselves. Okay. I'm going to pause for a second to see if there are any questions before I move on to the relational continuum, which is very similar in layout. The difference is moving away from how we make decisions for ourselves and how we maintain relationships with other folks. Okay, keep going. Let me make this last point. One of the primary aspects, as we talked about, functional level of differentiation. One of you maybe ask ourselves, are we talking now about functional levels of differentiation or basic levels of differentiation? And so the greater level of basic differentiation, less fluctuation we're going to have. And so what often happens on both the individual continuum, how we make decisions for ourselves, and the relational continuum, is that when stress enters the picture, we see the fluctuation that happens in terms of our functional level. And so what happens with this is that oftentimes, and you can encourage you to think about yourself and how this applies to you and to your child. But most of the time, stress is low. People find themselves on the rational side of this continuum. They may not be out at the 100%. Say they're at the 75% rational, 25% emotional. When stress is low. And when stress begins to enter the picture, things become more challenging. What often happens is that there's a swing all the way up over to the other side, and we don't just swing out to the 50-50 mark, we swing all the way out to a part like a continuum. So it's all of a sudden become now 75% emotional and 25% rational. And you may think of a time where you may think of a time where with your child, they be very coherent, and they're there and they're rational, and you boundary with them, and it's like a big flip. Whoa, where is this coming from? Right? What's happening is this shift from this extreme of being engaged into rational, and then when you press the picture, the big challenge, and it's all the way over to that extreme in terms of the emotionality, and that quite often is something we solidly camp out in one side. Now, because of that, the goal isn't to move from the rational side to the emotional side. If we're on the 75, again, the goal is to be 50-50 in the middle. We don't want to just swing from side to side. We're hypothetically 75 away from the goal. And it doesn't matter if we're 25 away on the rational side, 25 away on the emotional side. So the goal would be better to be tend to be engaged intellectually, because that's where one is. It's really just one point. So to become a little less engaged rationally and a little more engaged emotionally is better than that swinging back and forth that can sometimes occur. So on this slide is a relational continuum. This is how we relating to other folks. And you'll notice that on one side we have individuality. Another word for that is autonomy. Adolescents often confuse this with independence. They're not the same thing. We can think of this extreme level of individuality and autonomy to its extreme. It's really narcissism or being cut off in a relationship. It's all about that one person, and so that's not healthy. And at the same time, on the other side of the continuum, we have connectedness. That is a great thing. Just like individuality is a great thing, but connectedness to an extreme is not healthy. That's actually being very dependent on other people. So the goal is how does one, particularly an adolescent, but as an adult as well, how does one go about maintaining a relationship where one brings up a level of individuality and autonomy and be connected to that other person? That is truly what independence is about. The ability to maintain oneself. I know who I am, independent, autonomous, and choosing to be connected to others, but who they are will not define or change who I am. And that's the goal that we're working towards in terms of true independence, which is different than I can't sell myself around parents, which is some of what adolescents don't say. They say independent because I'm independent. They don't want me dependent. Well, they're truly independent, and who they are doesn't change when they're with you as their parents and guardians, or when they're with friends. They're able to be themselves. And the most dynamics that I see the young men and women that we work with is that they're working through this. They developmentally, appropriately, they want to have an independence, and yet don't know how to go about getting healthy or productive way. And so what's happening for them, again, if you remember the last slide, we talked about this swing from one end of the continuum to the other. That happens here as well. And the difference here is that this is like a relational continuum. And so many times, what happens with the students is they want to meet this need for connectedness and gather-gatherness. But now they're adolescents and young adults. When they were children, they got these needs met within a family. So they got action family relationships. They received their independence through these relationships. And that was all happening within the family of origin. Well, all of a sudden, in adolescence, family and parents become a little less important, and who becomes more important to them is their peer group, much of the time. And so what happens is that young adults, adolescents, are working to gain this level of connection through their peer relationships. And in order to do that, many of them are giving up their sense of individuality and autonomy.
And because of that, they come back home after spending a day, 2 days with their friends, feeling very connected and belonging. But they just sacrifice all of that power and control that comes with being autonomous and being a true individual. And so they come back in the home and they say, hey, how you doing? Lash out at you. And they say, why are you asking me? Stop asking me questions. Just let me be. Right? And they're asserting themselves in a way where they're trying to get their independence. It's not healthy because what they're doing is now they're sacrificing their connection and belonging to you to get that individuality. And so they're getting their needs met, never lead one relationship. So when they want connection, they go to their friends and they give up their autonomy. And when they want some autonomy, control, come back home and lash out. And it's a very common dynamic. I'm exaggerating that pattern to make point that may not be extreme experience, or it might be. We see it quite often. The issue that I'm trying to illustrate though is that level of stress and with the adolescent development. They're striving to have these things in a balance that they're not sure how to do. And that's where coaching and support is tremendously helpful because they're actually working toward the same goals that you as parents work toward. They're just doing it in many other ways and in ways that are extremely frightening and scary when they begin to act out. Again, as I mentioned, when stress begins to increase, the students are going to, your children are going to change from side to side. And it's really true for you. Think about a time where you're connected to somebody, maybe it's a partner, maybe a child, and there's a level of emotional intensity that enters the picture. What happens? Do you leave that relationship? Do you leave that moment to have some space? You need some autonomy there. Do you when things become concerning, you go together. You really love to have that connection until things can be resolved, at which you can feel better. But stress will have play a role in wanting to manage this. Again, it's going to be a great indicator when the overall level, basic level of differentiation is low, and we'll see more fluctuation. And that will be an indicator for yourself of a way of how can I have confidence that my child is really making changes and growth. One way to understand what you're hearing from your therapist each week. Are you hearing that when things are very challenging and difficult for your child, are they handling things differently than they would have before? That's going to be a good sign. It's going to be a sign that in moments of higher stress, they're able to handle that. We've set of skills that they're developing. That's what we're going to be looking for. Not just that they can handle the high stress. They could do that. I mean the moments of low stress. They could manage low stress but really the indicators on how they manage stressful situations. So here's some benefits of differentiating. So when one differentiates on an individual level, one's going to be able to take in the information, make sense of it rationally, make sense of it emotionally, and so one's actions are going to be actually valuable. They're able to slow that process down. Think about what do I really want to do here? Whether that's your child, whether you're pressured by your peer group to do something, slow that down emotionally. I feel like going along with my group, that's what you do intellectually. I know that's going to be everything I've been taught, everything I believe. Therefore, I'm going to balance that and make a decision that matches what I believe is really in my long-term interest, action, match value. That plays out as parents as well. They're making very harmful decisions for themselves as children. How do you navigate that situation when your emotions are high and being able to deliver clarity and significance of that action while still conveying the content in a way that will allow you to be heard by your child. That you'll be like, oh wow, that was a very serious infraction I had to address, and I'm happy the way that I model handling tough situations for my child. So there's a greater think before acting. there's less emotional reactivity as I just described, and again, there's a greater level of intent with actions. And because of that, there's a greater level of thought flexibility, and a greater level of rational flexibility, thought flexibility as well, and emotional flexibility. And there's going to be a distinction between what I even feel from what I know to be true. And that's something that's very hard to distinguish. Many people, when I encourage them to pay attention to a mixed feelings are with their beliefs. That's an important distinction, because we may feel something that may just not, you may actually not be true. Slow that process down and pay attention to what am I thinking about this, and what do I feel about it. We can have a greater level of clarity of what's going on, and then determine how to move forward. On a relational level, what this means is that we're going to have a greater level of intimacy and connection in the relationship. And again, because as we increase our level of relational differentiation, our basic level of differentiation, what happens is that we're able to know more of who we are and choose to be together with people who know who they are. So there's a level of connection that's there, and courage that's not there for all out of that autonomy. It's all about me, do what I want to do, or else I like you, or out of that dependent side, which is whatever you want, that's fine. Just as long as you're happy, that's great. That's not a true relationship for intimacy, because they're not really present. Neither of those two are present in a relationship in a way that fosters connection. So there's going to be a greater level of thinking, who am I? What do I want in this relationship? How does that affect the other person who's in this relationship? So there's going to be a greater sense of self that one can bring. There's also less rescuing relationships, so less enablement, and less demanding and threats involved in the relationships as well. And the last illustrated true on individual level, from the relational level, there's a greater flexibility, greater willingness, and an ability to cope with change last minute, and higher levels of stress are just less of a factor in terms of determining how one is going to change in that relationship. So we've talked a lot about what differentiation is. We've talked about the individual continuum, how we all go about making decisions for ourselves, how adolescents go about making decisions for themselves, balancing emotionality, rationality, how we relate with other people, balancing our need for individuality and autonomy on one end, and on the other end, our need for connection and belonging. And now we're going to talk about how adolescents get here. How does that balance? Because we all have a level of differentiation. And so what I want to point out is that the basic building blocks for differentiation are in there when you go at that time of birth. And yes, there are still many factors that influence a child's development of differentiation even after birth. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because that's where our influence really is. So the family dynamics are the primary function factor that play out. So how even at a young age, even still adolescence, how the family goes about navigating stressful times is going to be what the child picks up on. When things become stressful, how do the other family manage that? Do they cut off from that and run away and seek a level of individuality and autonomy to feel better emotionally? Do they come together and solve that, address that problem in a way that works for that family? Or is there a level of control that comes in? I will not be satisfied until it's resolved the way that I want. And children are picking up on this even where they're verbal, and that comes plays into how they go about resolving anxiety. And that's what a lot of this is about. Is differentiation is a model to not only understand adolescent development, but to understand family dynamics, how the families works to resolve times anxiety and stress and turmoil. And ideally, the family comes together to work to successfully navigate this. At times, problematic patterns can surface. So the family relationship is part of how a young child and an adolescent learns to navigate those relationships and make decisions for themselves. The parenting styles are a factor in terms of again how does the parental unit work to solve problems? Is there a level of control? Is there a level of avoidance? And that's going to play into that situation. Is there rationality that explains away the emotion that one is experiencing? Or is there an level of emotionality that dominates that whole process? Or again, is there some balance? Children are going to be picking up on this. As we look at that, just keep in mind that the parents, siblings, extended family, but children are paying attention to what's happening and how they can relate to others around them. And this is another part is that to increase someone's level of differentiation, it requires attention to change out paying specific attention to differentiation. The one's level is not going to fluctuate. It will remain about the same level of differentiation as the previous generation. So ask yourself, how much more differentiated do you feel parents? Do you find yourself doing some of the things that they did even though you didn't want to do that? Is that an emotional reaction? Did you intend to do that? And you may find that you are having a level of differentiation that's similar to your parents. It's a generation. It makes concerted effort to do a few things differently, and they move a few points up the scale. Will not happen without intention, awareness, and an actual choice to do that differently. So without intent, there will be no shift in that change in that level of differentiation. Another slide here, just a quote. I guess it's not a paraphrase from many different sources. That maintaining a healthy emotional connection is necessary. Especially when in anxiety-provoking situation, in order to increase that level of differentiation. So know that you do not need physically connected. In fact, research shows that a level of physical distance being emotionally connected is the best environment, increasing the level of differentiation. What happens is one can create and recreate those patterns in a way that interferes with the differentiation effort. So the emotional connection is important. Physical connection is not necessary, and many times can interfere with true levels to efforts to differentiate. So here are barriers and things that get in the way of differentiation. Again, it means how can I manage these continuums that we talked about in a way that has a level of intention. Triangulation, and basically is the idea of when there's a problem between two people, one of them holds a third party. So person one is a problem person two, and if I use myself as an example, I go talk to person three about this, and after talking to person three, I feel better. So I never go back to person two to resolve that. Well, that's going to interfere with my ability to successfully differentiate. I've mitigated my anxiety, but I've not actually been present with this other person in a way to differentiate. I'm not as present to say, hey, these are the issues I'm having in this relationship. Even though it's most challenging to have this conversation, I know I need to make this effort, and we're going to have this conversation. That's not happening when I'm somebody else, and therefore it's going to interfere with my ability to become more mature. Any type of avoidance is going to do right. Triangulation is just emotional avoidance. And patterns are emotional avoidance as well. As an adult, if you find yourself in your child, it's often because a level of emotionality that surfaces that is easier to intervene on behalf of your child. And when you do that, you'll feel emotionally better. But it's actually preventing your child from navigating that experience for him or herself. And it's prevented you from experiencing or tolerating that as well. So that's going to interfere. All other patterns that you can see on there is drug use, whether it's online gaming, gambling, overeating. There are many ways to avoid all of which fear successful differentiation. Again, parenting being permissive with the parenting style, authoritarian. That's a separate webinar that maybe we'll get to at some point in parenting styles. But those parenting styles will interfere with the development of successful differentiation as well. And here the unhealthy belief systems, if we subscribe to beliefs about ourselves that are just not true, that's going to interfere as well. Because we will believe things about ourselves or relationships that are untrue, and therefore giving an unhealthy weight to an emotion that is not actually true factually, and that will very likely interfere with how one goes about addressing that issue. So those are barriers that commonly surface that prevent people from reaching that level of differentiation that they really want for themselves. Again, this is summary. I put a slide here just to highlight that I think what happens here. Again, this is a normal development assessment working towards differentiation, and the goal is for the adolescent. They want to separate. They want to launch, and they also want to avoid anxiety. So the struggle comes with it. They're not sure how to separate from their origin in a way that allows them to healthy, productive way and manage anxiety that comes through a period of time. Problematic patterns don't resolve. Again, parents, what they want for their children is safety of their child when they begin making unhealthy choices. But also to launch that child. I believe that is the goal that you have to have the confidence that they're ready to launch. And so again, depending on the child's ability and the family's ability to navigate this, there can be successful differentiation or problematic behaviors as a result. These problematic behaviors are some behaviors that we see that lead toward enrollment drive. Not all of them. I just there to say perhaps one of the ways we can see these behaviors is an attempt to separate family to define oneself. Now it's not a healthy way to do that. Perhaps using this model we can see that some of the drug use behavior can be another way to look at my child. Perhaps wanting is to feel a level of connection with friends and separation from me, and they're not going about it in a healthy, productive way, and because of that, some of these problematic symptoms are resulting. And then it can snowball, right? And when trying to address that, there can be anxiety with family that now these behaviors become problematic in themselves as a way to avoid that emotional discomfort that's coming with health and boundaries family. Now they may act out violently, they may avoid running away or escaping into drugs, alcohol, or many other problematic behaviors. So what do we do with this? So understanding that some of the behaviors we see are symptoms of successful differentiation, and knowing that some of them then become a way to stay, that they create a level of being stuck because it is going to feel better, but it doesn't increase or doesn't help them work towards the ultimate goal that they have. How do we help students, and then also how do we help you as a parent understand this and move forward? So in the initial stage, when we're doing students, when I work with parents, I want to normalize that some of what they're going through is rooted in a healthy developmental process that's gone awry. Right? Not trying to normalize necessarily the child's behaviors, but saying saying that some of this is written in an effort that your children have that we're unsuccessful in navigating the situation, normalizing that process, highlighting the significant severity of those choices that the child is making. Also, that I want to help the students determine, and hopefully parents as well, do I typically on the individual continuum fall on the emotional side when I get stressed, or on the rational side? Do I go to lash out in relationships and have individuality, or do I go to the side of seeking connection with other people? Because when they begin to define where they are, when you begin to define where you are, they can make a conscious effort when stress begins to rise, not to the other side of the continuum, but stay engaged, intentional. And the first step is knowing what do I typically do when stress begins to rise. Also can be helpful to point out this what this looked like in the family for previous generations. Oftentimes, a pattern can plays out. Sometimes we mimic that generation. Many times a very conscious choice not to do our parents do unintentionally. We go to the other extreme, and we begin acting out. Instead of maybe our parents are very direct and authoritarian, and we become submissive. And turns into relation aspect that's going to be that is concerned about. I think that individual perhaps become too concerned about that connection with our kids. So here's the treatment goals that I like to work with students. When I'm working with them in the field. Again, on the individual level, how they make decisions. Also, I want them to have an understanding of the unhealthy choices that they're making themselves. Again, most of them, that stress goes up, make very emotionally reactive decisions that do not match their values. So help them understand what are their values and how can their values form their actions, highlighting that discrepancy. That moment seems very stressed, and you see the side of everything we just talked about 20 minutes ago in terms of being important to you. So helping the context to understand their variance in terms of high stress and low stress, and talk about that connection. Again, it's not rational. Is better with that particular dynamic for somebody who goes to the end of being emotionally reactive. For that particular person, they're going to slow that down and be more intentional. The awareness wheel and the placebo, those are just tools that we use with students to help them have a better understanding of this concept. The next couple slides. I'm noticing time here, and I have just a few more slides to talk about. And so we're probably a little bit over, probably about 7 or 10 wrap up. So if you sign off, know that we have it, and if you're able to stick in there and ask questions, I'm happy to stick around. So just know we'll probably be about 10 more minutes. So at the individual continuum, what we have here is again, want to teach emotional regulation. So if someone finds themselves on that emotional side of things, they can be aware of that, know how to calm down by using relaxation techniques, by understanding the difference between primary and secondary emotions. Just understanding some of the research that we present that helps them understand the concept of I'm emotional. That's not inherently a bad thing. I need to learn how to manage that so that I can be intentional, even when I'm feeling these strong emotions. And that's the goal then. The treatment goal for someone who finds themselves on that emotional side. At the same time, again, we want to strengthen that cognitive process. So to help people help again, whether it's an adolescent or a parent begin to stop their racing thoughts that they have. Stop that and to confront that, to be able to determine is this actually true? What's happening? Confront the distortion, positive self-talk. So there are a number tools, and even problem solving, very practical. Your questions to ask yourself to work problem solving. So it's a very rationally address the situation that's coming up. Depending on the person will depend on the particular goals. I use these examples to highlight what we want to address both. So it's clear that one side is not better than the other. It's a balance we're striving for. On the relational continuum, what we want to do is highlight and contrast to the students the relationship they're having here, guides with their peers, and even letters and vocal with parents, family class with parents. Look how friendly relationships can feel now, and what is that about? And helping them be able to understand their level of connection that they're having, even being independent and autonomous. That's a new experience for many of these students. Highlight that and help them understand. That's something that we help create within this environment, but that they can create themselves too. And then I talked about meeting their needs for belonging, peers, and autonomy. Their parents want to highlight that and talk about that and show them that at times that comes up with the guides, at times that comes up with the therapist, or probably still comes up at times with parents, through letters. And so we want to talk very directly about that, so to have a context for understanding both that they have, and encourage them to get both of those needs met. And the question, how can you go about meeting the need for connection and autonomy in one relationship? What would that look like? That's the goal. And then to have them have value-based decisions. So treatment goals on this again. This is a relational continuum. On the one end, we have the individuality. I'm going to assign a particular interactive activities or intervention assignments that will facilitate a level of autonomy within the group. And some of that can be encouraging to them to think about their personal values away from their parents or away from the group. They think about what are the factors that more values and beliefs that they want to guide their life. We'll give them assignments around that. We provide a solo experience if that's appropriate. We'll write a letter of responsibility. Really be a time to let the letter to the parent can be a time of reflection and ownership of what has been going on for them. Also, you'll notice on here there's what we call the hard skills, the wilderness skills of road drilling, leadership, being the shelter setup. A lot of ways to encourage that individuality within the context of the greater group. On the connection side of things, then we encourage that level of cohesion. We build practice empathy. We want the students to practice that not only with each other, but guide parents, understand what is it like to connect to somebody so independent to them, and I know what's going on for them. Able to receive support. Many students, it's hard to do, to be open to receive that support, and that is a part of connection. Also wanted to speak openly about what they think on an individual side of what they need, and then on the connection side, trust the relationship and begin to advocating themselves in that pure dynamic. It can be very scary for many at the beginning, and context provides a great opportunity to do that for the first time for many of them. And then just very intentional with the family correspondence. Are they playing all those dynamics with parents, letters, phone calls, and if so, highlight that in a way that is able to be understood within this context of differentiation. So with the family, so as you're sitting there, wow, this applies to us as parents as well. What do we do? Well, on the individual continuum, what you as parents can do is think about decisions that you have to make as children for your children. Think about this whole decision
to hire an educational consultant, to listen to their recommendation, to your child adolescent might have been an emotional response of wow, this is very just hard, and yet there was a cognitive process too of and I know that we need to do something. I'm going to trust the greater wisdom here of the professionals, and you were able to balance that. Think about that day-to-day experiences that you have. How can you balance your experience emotionally with what you know to be true intellectually? That's true. Not only about the decision to enroll your child here at Wise Guide, but in terms of when to consider a family class, or whether to consider after Wise Guide, or even unrelated to this, just in your day-to-day life with your other children at work. How balance what you are experiencing emotionally, what you know to be true intellectually. Practice that so you can model that for your children. It's extremely important. And you can as you get ahead of that, to make that overt. So if you have other children at home, you can begin to talk about and say, wow, this is really tough for me emotionally, and yet I know this is what I need to do, so that's what I'm going to do. You can begin to introduce that language depending on the age of your child. You can phrase it differently, make that overt. It can be very helpful, not only for yourself, but as you're raising your children. Again, just having a heightened awareness of what's going on for you. Here we talk about the three wrath. We talk about four lines of feeling check. That's all going to help balance this continuum. And as we often talk about in Wellness Weekends, that is going to, as you're able to manage those emotions and be attuned to what's happening, you'll be able to act in ways that match your values. Again, it's always helpful to address whatever's coming up for you, whether that's depression, anxiety, just some of your own aspects of the emotional process, addressing it head on. And then just highlight that your like I said, modeling for your children. So the way that you handle these situations in the short term will play into how they handle them in the long term. You can help confront magical thinking. There are times where you like to believe things that your children are telling you, or you see some magical thinking for them, and you can highlight that by telling them what you're experiencing emotionally about that, but also what you know to be true. Even though I wish this to be true, where I know it's hard to say the reality of the fact that you're not going to be able to get into college that you really want to. Intellectually, I know that's kind of where we are right now, and being using that to navigate some of those difficult situations can be helpful to them, so that they can see how not to buy into what they want to be true, but that's not actually true. And then on the relational side of things, paying attention to how can you get to what you in a relationship with your child, or spouse, or with anybody, but also what do they need? How do you find that balance there? So to be attuned in that relationship. Again, having that individuality and the autonomy, but also using it in a way to be connected. And then just being mindful of the desire to either when things get tough, to cut off and separate, or to come in and be enmeshed in a way that is controlling of key circumstances. And if you find yourself to be on the enmeshment side, you're managing those emotions, you have to be able to allow others to navigate that circumstance. If you find yourself being to leave the situation, how stay and maintain some presence in that relationship for a little bit longer. Again, your modeling. I can't say that one enough. So this is really the last slide. Just when families can when families work together to increase their level of differentiation. That's what we well-adjusted, well-differentiated family, and they typically are going to pass that generation to generation.
There's a little fusion or distance. They're not going to be completely enmeshed where they are over reliant on each other. There's a level of healthy independence. And there's also not a level of cut off as well. Yeah, close. I just haven't talked to my brother in 5 years. That would be an example of fusion. I think the real example here is where the last where families, religious families can allow each other, allow other family members to experience their emptiness or periods of emotional pain without rushing in to resolve or protect each other from that pain, because that prohibits growth. They can allow confidence that each other are strong enough to navigate this. It can be supportive without interfering with that. And so that's the result. That's what we're working for is helping everybody reach that level of differentiation in a way that we can be truly present with each other, to have a level of intimacy where we know who we are, and we choose therefore to be connected with others who know who they are. And so that's really the goal here. I have, just for the sake of the presentation, several references that you can look through. There's a couple slides here of references, and so thank you. I appreciate I'm happy to hang around for a couple moments if there are any questions about this. And I do want to just again thank you for tuning in. It's an indicator of your investment in your family, and so I appreciate that. Please keep this browser open. Be directed to a short survey. It's only a few questions, and that is very helpful. We try to use the information that we gathered from that survey and determining what webinars we will present in the future. So thank you. I'll hang out for just a couple moments, see if there are any questions. Feel free to chime in, and thank you in advance for filling out the survey.